Donna Schwartz here from the Everything Saxophone Podcast. I'm here with Dan White. Now, this is going to be an amazing episode. You're going to learn so much about Dan and the performances that he does with like Corey Wong and Huntertones, a group that he founded, and so much else. I wanted to say outright that P Mauriat Instruments is sponsoring this episode. Thank you so much for doing that. We're also going to be talking about Dan's setup and why he chose P Mauriat, why he continues to play P Mauriat instruments as well. So welcome to the podcast, Dan.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we were talking beforehand. I'm just going to say it outright now. So when Jody Espina from Jody Jazz had me go to his factory, we taped a whole bunch of episodes for the podcast. Y'all can catch those. But he introduced me to the Huntertones. I never heard of your group before, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. And Jody was like, yeah, you guys play in Savannah a few times. You play all over the place,
hmm
and it was so cool when I was speaking with the folks like Jeremiah True at P Mauriat, and he's like, oh yeah, Dan White is one of our artists. I'm like, I got to reach out. And then, I learned obviously you're part of the Huntertones and all that kind of thing. So I'm really excited about this. And the funny thing, Jody and I talked about this, Danielle Walker at Jody Jazz talked about this also, how so many people that play P Mauriat instruments also play Jody Jazz mouthpieces.
Yeah,
It's kind of
definitely a lot of
odd.
crossover.
It's just so odd, that relationship. But let's do this though. I love for people to get to know our guest's background. And we were talking a little bit about this too, because I was curious about one particular thing. But you grew up in Buffalo, New York.
Mhm.
As I mentioned, I grew up in Long Island, and we were talking about how you had such an amazing experience. So, was your first instrument saxophone, or was it something else?
First instrument was the piano. And
Okay.
so that's where I learned how to read music, started getting some coordination, motor coordination going on. That was around 8 years old. And then band starts in Buffalo in most of those Western New York schools around fourth grade. So around 9 years old is when I started saxophone, started on alto. Saxophone and trumpet were the hot commodities.
Yep.
Everybody wanted to play those. Luckily, I made it through. I think the saxophone section was something like 30 or 40 kids in the band. Yeah, I started on alto. But I come from a musical family on both sides, big family, a lot of cousins. My grandfather was a music teacher in Western New York in Webster, right outside of Rochester, and he actually handed down his first horn to me. There's a connection there. And then he would have everybody in the family play together. And then on the other side, a ton of artists and amazing creative cousins. We would have to
Wow.
at Christmas we would give talent shows. We had to do something. We had to play for our presents basically. It was always around in the house. And my dad played trumpet. He's a chemical engineer, but I remember early on a motivation was always to play with people. And that was a reason for practicing, was so that you can share this new language with other people. And I always thought that was like the coolest thing. So he'd get his trumpet out and we'd play together.
You know what's really great about that is that motivation to play for people was instilled at an early age. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, there's always these fears of not sounding good enough and being afraid to play in front of people, and just having the not only the ability, it's more like having uh, um um your family provided the atmosphere for doing that, safe, supportive
Totally.
environment and stuff like that. I think it's funny you said play for presents, and I immediately was thinking, at least you didn't have to play for food.
Oh, I know. That's a total, yeah. There are worse things. It's not like we were forced. It's so bad. No. Uh,
I know. You got to joke around a little bit,
yeah.
but I think that's a great atmosphere. And so you started with piano. Yeah, that you mentioned the word coordination. I'm thinking, yeah, because two hands, right? I grew up playing
Totally.
trumpet, so one hand. So that's why piano and me are not the greatest of friends, but but
Also, the coordination of, the motor, the arms, the fingers, and the tongue, the articulation. That allowed for a lot of, I was excelling early on with music because I already knew I had like a rolling start because I was reading and I had that stuff going on.
and plus with the family too, you said your dad was a trumpet player. Were there any particular styles of music that were going on in the house?
Yeah, I mean, my dad's dad, the music teacher, he switched from saxophone to upright bass, and I mean, he would be gigging all the time. So Ray Brown was his favorite bassist. So Oscar Peterson, Ella
Okay.
Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong, but also like Sonny Rollins, Charlie Parker. These things were like around and talked about. So that was a big thing. Once I started taking a liking to it, I remember heading to hockey practices with my dad, and after I was thinking about switching to tenor, he was like, "Check this out," and it was saxophone Colossus, and it
Oh,
was, getting used to that. I just remember early morning practices and hearing Sonny and hearing like Strode Road and all these amazing songs and that sound and the articulation and just like the style that was ingrained very early on.
and also with Sonny Rollins, the impact of storytelling,
Oh yeah.
and phrasing and, clear phrasing and, yeah, just development of motifs, and just being exposed to that at such a young age. So you had said to me beforehand, so again, piano, saxophone at age 9. Did you did you start right away with private lessons, or were the teachers in school good enough that, they started you out?
My first year of saxophone, it was just school, using a rental sax, and then after that, it was like very clear that you know there was something here, and so they pointed me on to a high schooler that was studying with Dr. Schuin, my beginning band teacher's husband, and he was like the superstar at the high school. So not only did it get me going with someone early on, it also planted a seed to the light at the end of the tunnel. During middle school, a lot of times the band thins out. A lot of people start quitting. They start playing sports. They start doing other things,
Yeah.
going to choir. And I knew about the big band, the jazz band, and the concert band being like the coolest thing because the students were writing their own music and they were just amazingly inspiring people. So my teacher was Dave DiGiacomo, and he had me playing, Charlie Parker, starting to learn standards, playing along with Aebersold's. I remember the Maiden Voyage Aebersold book and working on, the count-offs and, repeating on that. He also started having me play just good music. I remember one of the first songs that I transcribed was Sir Duke,
Oh, wow.
Stevie Wonder, and I remember having to look up fingerings because of that line. And
Yeah.
it's in a hard key, especially on alto.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it took me months. And I remember rewinding. I remember the CD player I was using so intimately because I was hitting rewind so many times. And also just that song being sort of an introduction into music. Music is a world within itself with a language we all, it's like such a beautiful, poetic, it's
Yeah.
about Duke Ellington, but like, yeah, it's a really amazing, great way to start learning things. And so that was an early ear tune that I learned when studying with Dave. So it's like a fond memory.
Yeah, we spoke earlier too about, the impact of like eyes versus ears and stuff. And you mentioned that, to me earlier, your school used the Accent on Achievement book, but you were doing really well. And then talk to us about what your elementary school teacher had you do right after that, which is unique.
Yeah, I learned 50 ear tunes my first year of learning the saxophone.
Now that's
And
cool.
so, yeah, yeah, it was learning, nursery rhymes, patriotic songs, America the Beautiful, or the national anthem, Star Spangled Banner, and then starting to play them in a different key. Once we started running out of songs that maybe I didn't know or not, which is also a great teaching technique. It's like, do you know the song? If you don't know the song, then you're not going to be able to play it on the instant. Can you sing it? That sort of thing. And so it was like she was sprinkling the breadcrumbs of how to actually figure out this thing, which is playing by ear, which was really beautiful. And it was like a very encouraging, slow process that felt familiar and just challenging enough that each week I was like hungry for more and you know strengthening my relative pitch. I don't have perfect pitch, but the more I play, I feel like it's it's pretty much I hear through the saxophone, you know.
Yeah, and you know what I love too, and I did this with my when I taught public school, and I would have my kids learn simple tunes, and
Mhm.
then we would do it in minor, and then we would do it in other keys, and we
Right.
wouldn't read it. Everything would be by ear, and then they would play. Did she have you playing like root note bass lines and stuff like that?
I don't think we didn't start on that sort of stuff. That started coming with the composition and analysis that Dr. Schuon started teaching me around 14 or 15 years old.
Got it.
Um,
High school.
so it was more just, let's do that. I was doing that in my private lessons though, in trying to learn chord progressions and just trying to be able to navigate, uh, you know, key centers and voice leading, which for a middle schooler that was tough.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. No, for sure. I mean, it's tough for a lot of people just in general, but the thing though is that you were set up. You were set up for success because the thing is that, we sing all these nursery rhymes. We sing all these Christmas tunes, right? We sing our national anthem, which is not easy, by the way. People think, oh, the national anthem. That's one of the hardest songs to sing and to play, you
Yeah.
know? And that's why, people shouldn't be surprised when people make mistakes. But, seriously,
Know
because
when they're doing it live.
I know, my gosh. And the range on that thing too,
Mhm.
So no, I think it's awesome that she did that and she set you up for that. When did you know that you wanted to make music your career?
It was right around that time that we started, my dad and I started listening to Saxophone Colossus. He took me
Interesting.
to a Joshua Redman concert.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And at this time, he was doing the Elastic Band stuff with Sam Yahel and Jeff Ballard. It was a trio with a B3. And man, we had one Joshua Redman album in the house. It was like a live in studio album that was very different from a lot of his other stuff. But I had never heard any of the Elastic stuff. And so I heard Jazz Crimes as the encore live. And I just remember it just blew the doors off me. I was just like, yep, this is exactly what I want to do. Josh Redman's like inspiration of inviting people into the party. It was not elitist, it was fun. He told a story with, what he said on the mic in between the songs, but also, the way that he played. And I love that so much. And so that was very much the moment. I was like 14 or so. So
Wow. Okay. You know what? You said something interesting too. It wasn't elitist, it was very inviting. And just the fact that having that conversation with the audience in between songs, for some people it's really uncomfortable. They're incredible musicians, but it's like, oh my God, do I have to really talk now? But the thing though is that I'm thinking that that maybe had more of an impression on you than you think, in the sense that telling the story, then he plays it, then you have this different lens that you're looking at the song, and or how he composed it, how he came up with it, or something that related to it. I'm thinking that that may have helped keep that impression on you.
oh yeah. I mean, I didn't know a lot of the music that he was playing. And so it's not like a musicological or historical problem. It's like what is this? What's this song? I would like to listen to this when I get home.
Yeah.
And so just as simple as giving a context to something that is non-lyrical. I think it's essential, and I think he's one of the masters of providing that context and inviting the listener in.
Yeah, because it makes it enjoyable, and again, it's all about sharing this with the audience, and making the experience, it's an experience. It's not just a concert, it's an experience. And I'm
Hmm.
saying this for a reason, because of the type of music that you do now, because what the type of music, the musicians you play with, it's an experience, you know. And we'll definitely get to that in a bit, but I want to dive a little bit more. So you knew the moment, it's like, oh my gosh, first listening to Saxophone Colossus, then, you know, seeing Joshua Redman live in concert, it's like, wow, this is awesome. So
Yeah.
then you probably were studying privately, doing some other things in school, and in New York State, we're very lucky because there's a lot of organizations for young kids to participate in musically. So what were some of the things that you were doing?
Well, around this time, I started to realize that maybe my lane wasn't sports. The hockey career came to a head when in house I was playing against a young Rob Gronkowski, who at that time was about, over 200 pounds and probably 6'4" plus a couple inches with skates. So luckily I survived that. And then after a short-lived wrestling career, I was like, all right, I think distance running and music is the lane that I'm gonna be sticking to, and
Oh,
which
wow.
I'm grateful that I was a late bloomer for that reason. And so yeah, early on I went to this camp, music camp in Saratoga Springs at Skidmore College, and that was a really eye-opening experience. A couple years after this Joshua Redman concert and getting to see some of the superstars of my age bracket, playing
Yeah.
and studying with people like, Curtis Fuller and the La Barbara brothers and Todd Coolman and getting to go to see the Saratoga Springs Jazz Festival. All of this was like a cool thing. And I saw that nobody was really composing at that or arranging, and that was sort of a way to stand out. And I remember being in like the computer lab on Finale, trying to like crank out an arrangement, uh, and that was a very you know memorable experience at that camp because that was one way that I was trying to stand out from the other musicians.
Okay, let me ask you. We talked about this beforehand too. So I went to we always call it Saratoga. It's New York State Summer School for the Arts.
Mhm.
And when I went, it was 1980, I think it was 86. Yeah, it was 86. There wasn't jazz at that time. It was all classical. It was brass quintets. I was in as a young composer.
Mhm.
So what year did you go?
I think this was either 2004 or 2005. Um,
Okay, got
I
it.
remember I remember one of the guests was Robert Glasper, and his trio, and he had just signed with Blue Note. He still had like the dreads and the
Wow.
eyebrow uh, eyebrow ring, and I remember him playing "Kiss from a Rose" vividly because I had the Batman Forever tape. That was one of the tapes that I had of very few, and I remember that song specifically. I didn't get why, but there was something mysterious and magical about that song, and
Mm,
it's just an amazing melodic writing and harmonic writing by Seal.
yeah.
And I just remember hearing a jazz musician playing popular music, and Robert Glasper is the man. So hearing that live was also a very profound moment of, oh, it doesn't have to just be standards that we play.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm so glad
Which
you said that.
at the same time, it's relative because standards of the day, back in the day, were also pop tunes.
That's
So that's where, the term standard, it's not like there's a cutoff at 1960 or something. So that was just witnessing that was really inspiring.
I'm so glad you're mentioning this too, because I know, there's this dichotomy where people think standard and then they think pop music, and they're not marrying the two. Again, not doing like what you just said. The standards of the day were the popular music. Those were the popular songs.
Mhm.
And so, people would be angry. I remember like the controversy with Branford Marsalis touring with Sting and being on his albums and stuff like that. And no, because I loved Branford Marsalis's playing, with
He
Sting.
he brings so much to that band,
Oh
and
my God.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it just, I just remember listening to that when I was in high school, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is just so incredible to me." And
Mhm.
yet, he got so much flack from people, and I'm glad he didn't, bother with that,
Yeah.
but the thing though is that the impression that is left on you. So when I was at Saratoga, it was all classical. We were studying with members from the Philadelphia Orchestra, and then the brass quintet people were studying with members from the Atlantic Brass Quintet. We had the composers program with that, but then they, thankfully added jazz many years later. So you guys lucked out, and the people even now, I'm sure, lucked out even more, with having that element to it.
Yeah.
Having jazz and having that exposure. It's one great thing about, I'm going to say it again, like the New York State School Music Association, they're really on top of things, and, giving kids from all over the state, from Long Island all the way up to Buffalo, these opportunities to participate in and stuff like that.
Totally.
Yeah. And are there, I know on Long Island, we also had some local, I know in East Meadow, we would have, what was it, the Nassau Suffolk Jazz Ensemble or something like that. Did you guys have something like that by you too?
We had no, I mean we had like the all county which were led by, one of my teachers after Dave DiGiacomo was a great saxophonist from Buffalo, Dave Chavone. And he directed that band for a few of the years. So I just have memories of doing, all county on classical and saxophone,
Oh,
and then also the state competitions, the NISMA stuff,
right.
all through middle school and high school.
Yeah, yeah. No, and it's just it really just sets you up for, a lot of great things. And so but you didn't stay in New York to go to college though.
No, no. I went to the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. I studied music performance and music education. That was a big thing that brought me down to Columbus, was that I could study jazz right away. A lot of programs uh, asked saxophonists to only study classical early on
Okay.
in their study, which wasn't super attractive to me. Also, being able to get a music education degree as well as a performance degree isn't, not every program provides that. And so this was a special thing that attracted me to Ohio State, as well as the fact that it wasn't just a conservatory that was separate from, the regular students or students studying other subjects. So we were around a lot of different artists, but also a lot of engineers and scientists and people studying math or business, and that ended up being actually a really, really great thing for me. And I met all of the members of Huntertones while at Ohio State, which I think
Both
is
members. Wow.
the main thing that I'm grateful for. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, so I'm an honorary Ohioan. But
Okay.
from 1 year old on, I grew up in Buffalo. So
Got
yeah.
it.
And
Okay.
but yeah, Ohio State, what it lacks in maybe prestige that some conservatories may have, the university has a lot of resources and a great football team. Go Bucks. And so while I was there, I actually I applied for a couple grants to record albums because there were no studios on campus. We were actually building a studio, um, and trying to get experience recording and, working with composition software like Logic and Pro Tools, and getting reps on doing this so that we weren't, graduating without any experience. And so
That's good.
we made records, and those were profoundly influential experiences of
Yeah.
what is, how to band lead, how to compose, how to produce. Shout out to Dr. Ted McDaniel, Dr. Sean Wallace, and my advisor, Mr. Tim Gerber, for helping make those grants happen. I mean, that was a huge thing for my career and for the band. It gave us something to work towards. So a lot of the music that we were studying while at Ohio State was the music of Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers.
Okay.
And so, also full kind of a full circle thing with Curtis Fuller from that camp. That era specifically with Curtis Fuller, Freddie Hubbard, and Wayne Shorter, some of like the finest arranged and composed music, and it's just the best. And that instrumentation is very similar to Huntertones, the three horn front.
I
We
was
learned
just gonna
so
say that.
much about music, playing that music and learning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Full circle moment right there. Wow. Okay. That explains a lot. And you know what? You know what this also did for you too? People think applying for grants is an easy thing. Not really. There's a certain, I used to do grant writing also. I was in social work, so I did a lot of that stuff. It's not easy. You have to follow certain formulas. You have to do a certain way. You've got to do a tremendous amount of research. It does take time, and you don't always get the grants. I think that was probably also a tremendous experience for you, not only at that time, but also as a musician just in general, because there are grants out there for musicians to apply for that can
Hmm.
help you to fund your projects and all that kind of thing. And I'm wondering if that experience helped you later on.
Definitely. I think the biggest thing is it caused me to sit down and ask myself, why? Why am I doing all of this? What makes this a worthwhile endeavor? What about what your message, what you're sharing, makes this worth recording or worth spending all this money and effort? It's why should I come out? Why should I come to this show? Is there something new? All of these sort of like the whys of of it inspired us to dig deeper and not just think about the notes and the rhythms and to think of, the big, these are more of the things that artists need to be thinking about. It's going way past the theory and more into like the heartfelt aspects of what gets you up in the morning and what inspires you to make music with your friends. And that's the thing that keeps me up at night dancing, right, working on a composition or trying to solve this puzzle, is the fact that I can't actually put it into words too well, but I attempted to on these grants because it's something that I love so much. That combination of playing new music, where we are improvising, there's a link between improvisation and composition, and doing that with audiences live, with a band of your friends, and traveling the world, and that's what I wanted to do, and I was starting to plant the seeds. I didn't have all the skills quite yet in college, but I was learning and I had my ears open. Um, and what recording does for you, it's like a mirror for a dancer. It's absolutely necessary in order to hear your sound, to create a feedback loop from the smallest details of you as an individual, but also the big picture, of how does this composition sound? Feedback about your arrangement, about the album. How does this album make you feel? Is this a well-rounded out? These not a lot of people get to make records every single year. And luckily, I've been able to do that, especially more recently. And that it's sped up quite a bit. That feedback loop of if I change my setup, if I change my writing style, you know, how does that make me feel? It gets me closer to that intangible thing that I'm going for.
Which
While I'm,
is
would I don't know.
okay,
I mean,
okay, okay,
it's the thing, it's expression,
okay.
my voice, whether it be compositionally or through the saxophone. That's the thing that I'm seeking, but it's a moving target, as I'm experiencing life and listening to new music, um, it changes and it develops along with my tastes. So that's where it's ever moving and elusive. But it's like I'm always writing music and I'm always searching for things. So the I'm always listening for it, and searching for it.
Oh, okay. I have a couple of questions, or at least the first comment. Aren't we lucky that we're living in a time today where it's not, where when I was growing up, there was no YouTube, there was no Spotify, right? There's none of that stuff. So you kind of confined to what's on the radio or what's in your library or what's in your record store. Okay, and this is sounding ancient for some people. I get it. I know. I understand. Okay, but just hear me out. But now, you could just go to YouTube or Spotify, and it's not the greatest music is not on your radio stations, you know?
Mhm.
It's a lot of the stuff that you guys are coming out with that, other people are coming out with, and how much of an effect and how eclectic it's making music. And it's interesting because I worked in Tower Records. I love doing that. I actually worked in the classical section. And I just remember thinking back then, because I was listening to a lot of folk music too. I really liked that scene and stuff. And how some people were on the well bridging gaps between certain genres, and so it was hard to classify them. And I remember having a conversation with somebody and they're like, yeah, if we can't find like a genre for a person, it's really tough for them. Where do we put them in the store? Under what card, under what section? And boy, have the lines been blurred since that time.
Yeah.
I'm talking the early 90s when I was working there. And it's just we're lucky in a sense because then we don't have to necessarily put a label on things, but we can describe it in other ways. And so I'm just thinking about what you were just saying, and I wanted to ask this question so maybe you can give some advice to people, and it's essentially this. A lot of people don't like to listen to themselves, don't like to watch videos of themselves. So what advice do you have for those people who to don't like to record themselves? What would you say to them?
Um, to get over it because that man, I remember having a Zoom H2 recorder for lessons. Um,
I had one.
I don't catch everything. We also have the privilege of being able to,
Yeah, the phone,
record
yeah.
anything it's like that's usually on the floor of every show that I ever play. Why? Because I don't claim to be able to hear every single thing that's happening in the moment. I'll hear what I hear, but allowing like recording it allows me to go back, and then if you want to judge, you can do that then. Because when
Afterwards.
you're actually playing, there's there's no time for judgment. It's a yes and always. If somebody plays, I don't know who said it, but I feel like I think it was maybe Bill Frisell that the mark of a good musician is somebody that takes something that may have been an error by somebody else and makes it actually a profound, makes it right. It's that thing of Miles playing a wrong note and Herbie changing the voicing so that it's like, I got you.
Yeah.
Always on. And it's like, okay, that's what happened. If that, then this. And so that's always the feeling that I want to have when playing. It's play, it's a playfulness. Um, and so always having my ears open, listening to everybody, whether I'm looking at them or not. That's always where I seek inspiration, and I'm trying to not judge. That's the reason I say to record and to get over it, is because when you go back and listen by yourself, after the fact, you can judge, you can be hard on yourself, but I would also say celebrate the good things that are happening rather than just focusing on the bad. So embracing the good and trying to create more of that, which is, I guess, a little bit more of a positive spin I would put on it. So rather than like, I messed that up, it's like, okay, cool, but you also nailed this.
What can you and it's really about you win or you learn. That's something that I've heard from people. And honestly, I wish I was told that, when I was a lot younger in high school and all that kind of thing, because I didn't have that positive mentality. It was always negative, it was always like, oh, that sucked and this and that, all that kind of stuff, which is
Mhm.
not good. We tend to beat ourselves up. But the thing though, I love what you first said, because you said just get over it. And it's funny because I've been working with my students and doing videos lately around this book, John C. Maxwell's Failing Forward, turning
Mhm.
mistakes into stepping stones for success. And the funny thing, he said the exact same thing. Get over it, because the thing is that um, the only way you're going to learn is by taking action, and let me ask you this question too, because you're playing a lot, all that kind of thing. One of the reasons also why people are afraid to record themselves, they're afraid of nasty criticism. They're afraid, of getting negative comments and all that kind of thing. How have you dealt with that? And what advice would you have for people that may worry about that?
I think that fear should not be, you should do everything you can to eliminate fear from your psyche with music. Um, and if you're not listening to yourself play, then you're in denial of something. It having a perspective on yourself and your sound. These things are so important. I mean, when I'm warming up, I always find a flat wall to play at so that I'm reflecting my sound back at myself rather than playing into like if you're playing outside, it's like you're getting no, response of what the horn is actually sounding like from the audience perspective. Um, but when I practice, I'm thinking about ways of making a weakness into a strength. And if every practice session you do something like that and you reinforce that, it's like adding a piece of, you know, armor. And by the time that you're going out to play, this confidence is built on that. And for me, it's an extension of the work that I have done to earn that confidence, where I feel like there's not an imposter syndrome. At my worst, I do feel fear and I feel it like an imposter. At my best, I feel bulletproof.
Mm,
There's just it's a faucet that I'm just turning on when I go to improvise and I'm actually improvising. You know, that's the thing that I'm going for. And so when I'm practicing improvising or changing my working on things that are weaknesses so that they become strengths. That's something that, you know, to give a little shout out to my college professor, Dr. Sean Thunder Wallace. You know, he talked about all of your horns being like a bar graph and raising the lowest bar rather than focusing on the one that's, you know,
interesting.
head and shoulders above the rest. And he was also Dr. Wallace was a teacher that believed in if you play saxophone, you play soprano, alto, tenor, bari, flute, and clarinet. No questions asked. And you need to study those, and you say yes to the gig, and then you figure it out along the way.
Mm. Learning by taking action.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's also a yes and kind of response, and very grateful for that mentality and that sort of discipline that he taught because that's what led to, you know, my gig with Corey Wong. It's like I bought a Barry sax 10 years before I had my first gig on it.
Oh, okay. Okay, wow.
Which and I, you know, never considered myself a baritone saxophone player. But to play with Michael Nelson, the Hornheads, and two members of Prince's band with Kenny Holman, it's like, yeah, yeah, I'll do that and figure it out along the way. And I've learned so much from that mentality. And you know, I do play all those instruments. I studied with doctoral students on flute and on clarinet during college for 4 years, and so that got me to a place where I can get by on the instruments. But more importantly, I've been able to use those voices in recording with Huntertones or with other bands, and so that's been hugely rather than being scared of it. It's like saying yes, figure it out, and applying the things that you learned from the instruments and the things that you're more comfortable on, applying them to these new things.
I've got a bunch of questions from this. The first one, the obvious one, how do you find enough time to keep your chops consistent on all the horns?
There isn't enough
Yeah.
time. And also, oh, I mean, the other thing is like composing and arranging and
Right, right.
learning and memorizing and all of these other things. You know, but it's like the Wayne Shorter quote. It's like, I dare you. That's what jazz is. And it's like, that's what doing this to make a living is like, I dare you. Say, do it. Well, let's see. And I would rather bet on myself and you know figure out what is the most pressing thing. You know, it's like right now I have in my head I also have, you know, documents organized of each instrument of what I'm working on and what's coming up. You know, we're getting ready for a recording studio in the end of August with Huntertones. So I'm trying to write music because we only have a limited amount of time together to rehearse that music as a band in one room. Therefore, you know, while we're recording this, this is April. I'm thinking about end of August. So looking ahead to that thing, I also have, you know, a tour in Japan with Corey that I want to basically memorize another 3 or 4 songs that I don't currently have memorized. So there a lot of times there will be an iPad on the stand, but I'm not looking at it. Why? Because I want to be present. I want to be confident with what I'm playing. And so that's part of this chipping away at like, you know, trying to make these things a priority. And then it's, you know, getting back to have some shows with Lake Street Dive. Haven't played with them for a little while, so rememorizing those songs. And so working on new music, working on older music, uh,
Yeah,
all of that while still producing music, it's like it's a weird continuum of music we've recorded, music that's coming out in the future for the audience, and balancing and juggling, keeping all these plates spinning. That's what it means to be a modern musician, I think. And so, but I love it. It's like figuring out that next. It's like last night I came back. I also wanted one thing that I'm thinking about doing, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna just commit to doing it is like a record of sax quartet music where I'm playing all four and I'm layering myself, and then I want to layer it and send it to drummers that are going to play over it. So the first level is all just by itself, and then the next level is with a beat to it. So
that's cool.
that's sort of like a challenge that I am setting for myself. That is just kind of like that's the way it's like if I have an idea, I like to write it down. I also me just saying this out loud and sharing it publicly is
Yeah.
also like a manifestation of like once you start talking about it to people, what type of person are you? Are you one that just talks, or are you actually going to follow through? And so I'm kind of I'm tricking myself into doing this
You're
now by
embracing the
actually
challenge. And just like you said, I
absolutely
dare you, right?
yes.
I dare you, and then you just find a way to figure it out. And, that's the whole thing too. And the thing you didn't mention though, the other things that most musicians, you know, or if you want to become a professional musician, don't realize you've got to market yourself. You've
Mhm.
got to do the advertising. You've got to get, people in the stands. You've got to pass around, get people excited about your music and all that kind of stuff. And that takes time too.
Totally. I think that's also that goes back to the thing that I was saying about the grant writing, which is
Yeah.
it's in the same uh, feeling of like why should I care? Like advocating for yourself, and it's like, do I need to share what I'm having for breakfast today on social media? No, but at the same time, do I want every single thing that I'm doing to be like, hey, come out to my show? No. So I think. I'm also trying to fight, the urge to be on apps. I don't want to be on them too much because I don't want that influencing my psyche of what I'm composing for or what I'm aiming at as an artist. I want that to be separate so that I can, when I put on the advertising hat and the music industry hustle hat, I can do that fully. Um, but when I'm writing a song or when I'm doing these things, Spotify playlists or virality of things that really has no place in when I'm composing or when I'm arranging because I'm just trying to chase this thing which is that
Moving
express
target.
myself.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do. And so there's sort of a danger in taking that low hanging fruit and aiming for that instead of something maybe bigger, that is a little bit more. I mean, as a musician and as somebody that is listening to music along the continuum of like, from Louis Armstrong or Charlie Parker up to modern day music, it's like, you're thinking on a span of time that's different from most other people, And so thinking of like what makes something classic. Our idea of classic is something that is uh, it it's timeless, right? And
Yeah.
it moves people across different cultures, and it's like trying to create within that thing is really hard. And so, I think it's just about that wearing different hats. It is totally important to get to advertise and to let people in. I think at its best for me is trying to inspire and tell that story that as an instrumentalist maybe isn't there or isn't obvious. So providing context and inspiring other people. One of the things that I think is really wild about music right now and people listening and watching on YouTube or Spotify is how it's like curation has sort of gone by the wayside. And so when other people that I respect talk about music or share a new single or share, a playlist, I listen and it's like if Questlove is dropping a Sly Stone documentary and a playlist along with it, it's like, let me go check that out
Yeah, yeah.
because it's really meaningful. And if you haven't checked that out, yeah, it's one of the most inspiring documentaries, and it's amazing work that he did on that. So
Yeah, yeah, and amazing work and he's done on other things too, just aside from
absolutely.
that as well. Absolutely. And what's really interesting too that you're also driving home. I mean, you're doing a lot of things, but you're embracing the challenge. It's exciting you. It's getting you up. It's the why of what you're doing. And the thing is that, social media is awesome. It's great. But the thing is that as you said it before, you're not getting into that mental, that psyche, getting sucked into it. I was saying this to some people the other day, the best players out there, do you ever see them judging people on social media? Do you ever see them giving negative commentary or telling people that they're awful? No. Do you know why? Because they're out there, they're so busy creating and doing awesome things.
Yeah.
Who has the time to go on social media and be nasty and negative?
Yeah, totally. And it's also, it's that temptation of perfection,
Yeah.
which isn't real, which
Yeah.
is not human. And I think it's especially now with, you know, I live in San Francisco. It's like every other billboard is about AI.
Oh, that's
Is
right.
AI better for everything? Absolutely not.
No.
And am I threatened in the line of work that I'm in? Absolutely not. The line of work that I'm in is creating something that is, truthful and real and authentic. Right before the pandemic, Huntertones made a record with Louis Cato called Time to Play. And it almost was like uh, creating a path for the next 5 years of my career because we were collaborating with Corey Wong on a song I wrote called Pontiac about my first car. Actually, the car that my dad was driving me to those hockey practices.
Oh, funny.
And it was a Pontiac Grand Prix Black. And so there was that song. We also did Jealous Guy with Aki Bermise, who's in Lake Street Dive. And Lewis goes on to become the band leader of The Late Show soon after this. But during the production of that album, there were click tracks and there was things that we could do in post. And Kato inspired us to just commit to do the thing live together, and not, be tempted by the perfection that you can add later on and all of these other things, but committing to being a band, playing live, and being real. And since then, we've recorded a lot more that way, and it's way more fulfilling as a band because it is real, and you are good enough, and what you have is special. And during the pandemic, man, if anything, that taught me the importance of connection and playing together with people that you have a bond with, because that is what's special. We are not an island here. Social media also kind of pushes the individual very far, and to go against that grain, I think making music with a band is a beautiful thing. The collective is a lot
Energy.
stronger than the individual. Absolutely. Yeah.
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 You just reminded me too, like, yeah, that whole dichotomy of, it's got to be perfect. I remember when CDs were first coming out and people were saying, no, they're too perfect. It just everything just sounds very mechanical and it doesn't have that vitality that like records have, that vinyl records have. But still CDs took over, but it was this thing of making everything perfect, right? And then the thing though is that I don't know, for me, I think great albums because of the energy, if there's ways to record them live, because there's just something about that when you're in the studio and you're, you know, doing 10 takes on one particular spot on a track, it's sometimes it's mind numbing, and it
Something
really,
dies.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'd rather do live, whatever happens, happens. I mean, but there's a certain energy there that, you can't, it's very difficult to replicate that when you're, doing like one track live. And actually that's going to be interesting for you too, because when you do that, I'm saying when you do that project where you're doing the sax quartet and having to think about that, as you're performing each part and stuff
Yep.
and trying to
Like
come up and
reverse engineering a band
yep.
because I know what I'm going for. And because it's like, but at the same time, there's also examples of it where I think of like, Prince's second album, the one, the light blue one where he's not wearing a shirt on the cover. I feel for you and I want to be your lover. He's the only musician playing on that thing. Maybe a keyboard solo, but he does it. And so that's like that's a good example of what I'm going for. Or like Stevie's records like that, where there's an identity that is so pure that is like when it's replicated through all the different instruments, it's a really cool statement rather than you can tell when things are like compressed, melodined, and slid into this thing that it's like, this, this doesn't sound real. It's like, sounds clean, but
Yeah. But you know what that also did though? Back in this was in the 90s and stuff. It also set impossible demands on musicians growing up thinking, "Oh, that sounds perfect. I have to be perfect." I remember this is so weird. I haven't thought about this in so long. But I remember we were talking about this, especially on a classical front, and how, just having to achieve, certain levels of performance that, the world doesn't realize how many takes, it took to create that one movement, that one track. Um, yeah, that's a lot of pressure on there.
yeah.
That's a lot of pressure, but I mean, obviously, we've gotten past that and in terms of that particular aspect, and I think it's more of a be real kind of mentality now, yeah, we have CDs, of course. I still buy CDs and stuff like that. And yeah, there's
Mhm.
still that thing where they're trying to make things like, better and cleaner or whatever, but it's still there's a different mentality now in terms of
I
being real.
think I think time is also you touched on it where it's like, is there enough time in the day? That actually can be a really good thing. Of like, you know what? This is this is the best it's gonna be. I need to go on, move on to the next thing. Kind of like blocks of time where you're not just like if you're not setting deadlines or not doing, the setting the sessions, there's a danger of like you can just keep just chipping away at this thing that was good enough
Yeah.
and you're now trying to achieve perfection with it and it's losing its soul and so sometimes just trying to commit and just do it live with a couple takes. If you can't get it there, then maybe there's some other problems here that you need. That's the creative problem that you need to solve, so solve it.
Yeah.
Pivot. you know Maybe it's not you. That's the other thing. It's like wearing different hats of arranger, composer, those things. That has opened my eyes to that thing too, of like, man, I was banging my head against the wall and there was a much bigger problem here, where it's like I've learned from bad examples. I've learned from things of people that I've learned ways not to do things, as well as learn from people that have inspired me of ways exactly that I want to replicate. So you can learn from both, just like you said. There's successes and then there's learning opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. And, a lot of times we learn more from what we don't like, because then it solidifies what we do like, or at least it helps us to hone in closer on what we do like
Hmm.
as well. You know what's interesting too? I wanted to touch back on this before, where you were saying with one of your college teachers where the horns, right? And you have the bar graph, and it's not a question of focusing on the higher part of the bar graph, it's bringing the others up and focusing on weaknesses. What, like, for if you don't mind sharing, like, what do you feel like as you're practicing now? I mean, right now you've got to work on all these songs and stuff like that, so the weakness could be that I've just got to get these 3 to 4 Corey Wong songs like memorized. That's not really a weakness, it's just something that you've got to do. But like, what do you feel an artist of your caliber, like what do you consider a weakness? And how would you work on it? I'm just thinking about how people would perceive it's interesting. People always ask me, well, how do these people practice? Or when they practice, all they do is play along to backing tracks, and that's not really doing anything. So, like, yeah,
Hmm.
how would you answer that?
Um, what would I consider a weakness? I mean, honestly, I would consider more things to be a weakness than a strength. Can I play anything? It's like I'd love to be able to play the Bach cello suite by ear, memorized. Can I do that? Not yet. It's more just like things that I haven't gotten to yet on my to-do list. Um, in playing with Corey Wong and that band, that has also taught me about um, you know, very intense 16th note lines at 140, 150, 160
Yeah.
sometimes, and saying that I dare you, trying to get to that sweat point of like, all right, if you can't do it in the practice room, there's no way it's going to happen on the stage. So really trying to like be fearless and put yourself in that mindset of it's more like psychological practicing, really, of like how do I get this so that it's just nails, while at the same time trying to practice things that are you know, elusive and bigger picture improvisatorial things. So we're talking, very different worlds of music here, where it's like, if we're playing Stomping Grounds, like I want to have that like nails. I know the song, I could sing it, I could, it's like it's all right there. And so what's a way that I work on that? I make that my warm up.
Mm.
I start the day with the hardest thing. Slow, it's not like I'm gonna so I but and then faster. And then like start with that thing that is not comfortable. Playing a blues in a hard key, um, transcribing, working on, some of these angular Eddie Harris, like the Oleo stuff, or one of the blueses from the Jimmy Smith and Eddie Harris album is insane. That's pretty foreign to me. I would love to get some of that language in my playing.
Mm.
And so those are just like when I get to it, when I can. I'm gonna go ahead and keep listening because the input I'm noticing is like the most important thing. Um, is keeping that uh, inspiring. That lights the flame for your output, whether as a saxophonist or, whether you're writing you could write a blues chorus for yourself and play it in all 12 keys. That's a way to integrate language that you maybe aren't listening to uh, automatically into your playing. If there's something that you're working on, play it up a half step, then play it down a half step. Boom. If you don't have enough time to go through all 12 keys, thinking of it as like a bite-sized chunk rather than thinking of like a, eternal triangle
Right, to
solo.
try to achieve.
You don't
Yeah.
have to, 12 choruses of B flat rhythm changes. How much is that going to influence you versus your favorite chorus played in all 12 keys? So instead of thinking of it horizontally, thinking of it shorter and vertically. I find that to be a lot more effective practicing for limited time.
That actually, that this is great because I was going to say, like, um, how do you organize your practicing? And like, do you plan it the night before? What do you do?
I think it's like a endless journal to myself
Okay.
of checklists of songs of and then it's also reminders. I'll go to a jam session and be like, oh yeah, Bolivia. Do I know all the chord changes of that second half? And then revisiting songs that maybe are reminders like that. And it's like realizing that like, oh, the way that I thought about this harmony is actually, wrong and overcomplicates things. So trying to simplify things to, maybe 10 years ago when I was learning this song
All
to
right.
now I'm a better musician, or I have more tools to make it easier to be able to just express myself over it. So it's more just like a constant. I think I'm just trying to not think too much about it, and time on the horn is valuable time. So the more that I can, spend time with the horn, working on tunes, just getting lost in it. I know right now also just like with the news and what is currently, it's sort of it's not sort of, it's dark times. And, I need to sort of take a step back from the news in a sense in order to maintain my like mental health,
Mhm.
which I realize is a privilege. Not everybody can do that, and a lot of people's jobs are at stake. We had a State Department tour where we were going to go to Togo, get canceled
Oh,
because they lost the funding.
funny.
This was something that was planned well before the election. But anyway, more getting into a place of like getting lost, listening to music, being inspired by something, making my own playlists of things that somehow live in the same world, whether that be compositionally um, or improvisationally. Since moving to San Francisco, been trying to get more in touch with some of the musicians from the Bay, Sly Stone, Tower Power, Joe Henderson, Bobby Hutcherson, and realizing there are some gaps in my listening and in my knowledge of their catalog. So trying to dig in and learn about that. That's like an endless, you know, journey though. So just trying to chip away at that. It's like I wake up in the morning, 3 or 4 days out of the week, I'll go and play tennis. Not actually play tennis. I'll hit serves and listen to music for about an hour.
Oh, okay.
Where I'm doing something with my body, I'm waking up, but also I'm starting off with music, which is I it's the best thing. I feel like it's really helping the output of ideas because I'm serving the input.
Yeah, my trumpet teacher Vince would say, good information. You want to feed your brain good information,
Like
and
nutrition.
yeah,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
nutrition. Okay, now let me ask, let me play devil's advocate. Okay, so you've got this endless thing of things that you're working on, but you embrace all these challenges, all that kind of stuff. But I think about some people that get so easily overwhelmed. They feel like there's so much to work on, and then that stops them dead in their tracks, you know? So, how would you advise someone like that who, let's say they're not a pro player, they're just starting out or, improvising a little bit, but they're just like, oh my gosh, there's so much to work on. How can I possibly work on all this stuff and feel like I'm making any progress. When these great people that are playing and you know Donna's talking to on the Everything Saxophone podcast, and they're feeling like they're like working on all this stuff. How can I organize myself?
I would go back to that thing that is not saxophone, that thing that is like just inspiration. Um, that thing that is meaningful to you. Because feeling lost and overwhelmed, that's a bigger thing that we shouldn't be causing that problem. This should be a solution for that problem.
Okay.
Almost like a meditative practice that is bringing stillness and like good into into the world.
First
So,
now.
for me, I think back to just like a couple recordings. Um, it's like a 30-second solo on that Cannonball Adderley and Nancy Wilson record on Never Will I Marry. That is, I'll put that against any other solo ever recorded. That is like the most
That's
melodic, soulful. Cannonball just wrecks it with that one. It's perfect. I love it. And so just go back and play that on whatever horn I'm playing. That that's the middle point, and it's just that. Yeah, I love that. The other one was from that Joshua Redman record called "Passage of Time." It's the last song. It's kind of smooth. It's called "After," and that song just there's it's got a special place for me. And so um, that was like my dad always wanted me to learn that one, and it had this high B a couple times.
yeah.
So there's the right way to learn altissimo, and then there's the wrong way, and I think
Well, we've all gone through,
I
I think.
I nailed the wrong way during high school, which was just trying to imitate Joshua Redman. Um, and so yeah, and now actually having studied it and really put in a lot of work on voicing, with that Don Cinta book, and also Ben Wendell's Altissimo book is excellent. During the pandemic, I reworked all of my fingerings, and it's still paying dividends. And so that's one that I keep going back to, but also just, Sir Duke, it's like, yes, there's the horn lines, but then there's also the verse and the chorus. And playing like Stevie, that was always the reward for getting through this very complicated instrumental thing. And so I would say to people that feel lost or overwhelmed to get back to that core thing that you love about music and to play that. And maybe if there's, once you're done doing that, if there's a way that you want to, make that an exercise, go for it. But don't start with the exercises. That's not the thing that you know, that's a very masochistic way of looking at this beautiful thing that we get to do.
Start with the music. It's let the music be your teacher, essentially.
Yes,
Essentially it.
yes, totally, totally.
Yeah. Especially, and especially, I mean, we're kind of not, we're not alluding to this, we're saying this right now, especially now, this is not easy times for everybody. And so using music as the vehicle for bringing joy and light and happiness, not only to yourself, but also your family and your communities. Because, the other thing too with COVID, I was doing porch concerts. I thought about my neighbors,
Hmm.
and we have a very active block. People walk all the time, all days, times, and the day and night and stuff like that. And people just felt really shuttered. And so I just opened the door and played,
Hmm.
and it really brought the community together. And I think this may be another one of those times, in a sense. You know, um, yeah, just the inspiration and finding out. I love what you said, finding what motivates you. It's funny because like people always ask like what's your favorite sax solos and stuff, and I have quite a few, but I gotta say, I was turned on to the Jimmy Smith Primetime CD album with Honky Tonk and those 5 choruses of solos. That, man, to me, they're just gold, you
Yeah.
know? That's just this great vocabulary there. And even the solo on Night Train from the movie Back to the Future.
Hmm.
I forgot, I already forgot the name of the band, but you know, just great melodic stuff. Any Stanley Turrentine stuff for me, you know? Gibraltar.
I got Mr. Natural up. I
Oh,
love,
okay, got it.
I love Stanley. Yeah.
It's yeah, so rhythmic, and
Hmm.
that kind of relates to like, the Huntertones, right? So again, I'm going to go back to my Tower Records story with where do we put these people in terms of genre, and it's hard to say like how would you classify the music that you guys play? It's energetic, it's fun, it's there's funk in there, there's um R&B elements. It's like how would you classify it?
It's all of that. It's good music. It's fun music. It's high energy. It's
Energy.
fearless. It's a band that is playing together at a very high level. It's like when I think of bands, I think of, Art Blakey Jazz Messengers. I think of
Right.
like the Meters. I think of like Oscar Peterson, Ray Brown, Ed Thigpen. I think of, Ahmad Jamal Trio. These sorts of things where it's people playing at a high level. And this is a long answer. Uh, when we start the band and when we start writing a song, we don't limit ourselves. It's more just it's a product of who we are, which is 6 different people that are listening to very different things.
Mm.
And at any moment in the day, it could be new music, it could be listening to Voodoo by D'Angelo, it could be listening to, you know, uh, Louis Armstrong, it could be listening to, Sonny Rollins, it could be listening to Duke Ellington Orchestra. It's like all of these different things, or Jimi Hendrix. It's like it comes from all those different places, but they don't seem all that different. It's still scratching that same itch, or it's all still living in that same world for us, where it's just it. It's that thing. It's
Yeah.
taste, that thing that like really moves you. And so we start from there, and categorically, it creates some problems for us down the line in terms
Okay.
of trying to
Okay.
like, fit this into a certain genre or a certain specific thing. All I know is that like we have our sound, and it's like it's no longer just writing for a trumpet player. I'm writing for Lampley or a trombone player. It's like that's Chris Ott. That's it's like these musicians are which that's a similar thing to the way that Duke Ellington talks about
Right.
orchestrating and writing for his band. Harry Carney is the baritone saxophone player. That's who you're right. Johnny Hodges is the top of the section. It's like that's it. Those are your bookends of the saxophone section, and it's like very very clear. Those personalities are in the composition, and it's not alto one and baritone saxophone.
Yeah, and I'm curious too because a lot of people also don't realize that, when you're performing with a lot of groups, there come times where people get their differences and then they leave, and or they just don't see eye to eye anymore. What do you think has been the route to your success with like, you guys staying together and stuff like that?
I think it's listening. We're constant. Like when we play, it's we are equals on stage, and it's you can tell, you know, and there are differences, obviously. I mean, we're different people, but negotiating those differences, it's a diplomatic thing, and I think communication and respect, those it's simpler than you think. That treating others the way that you want to be treated is usually the
Yeah.
solution to most issues. But it's a team sport, and I really, the sports analogies, I get that, and I really, I feed off of that in terms of, trying to motivate others and trying to lead by example, and trying to lead by, if we're stalling out or if we're getting stuck in, music business things, then what is the out? Creativity
Yeah.
or a new song or a new arrangement or a new thing, a new challenge to meet and to work on together. That's the thing. So a lot of times that has been the solution, which is the next mountain to climb together. Uh,
Mm.
and so trying to steer the ship in that way, where if I don't have the solution for the problem in a business sense, maybe I can come up with it in a creative sense.
Okay, yeah, creativity. And now let me ask this question, I guess conversely. So you guys started up at Ohio State.
Mhm.
How did you how did you, attain like a really great following? Like it's never overnight. I totally get that, but how did that happen for you?
Um, well, we started, this was early on at Ohio State. A couple of us were in the dorms together at Baker West on South Campus, and we were taking some music theory classes. I remember Hubble and I were in a music theory class together, and we were playing in the jazz ensemble and then the big band, and started booking shows outside of school at like a coffee shop. And then we still weren't all 21. So I started booking, not booking, we started having shows and house parties
Okay.
at the apartment that I lived in on Hunter Avenue. And so we would invite our friends over, and it became a thing of like, well, what makes this party different from the next one, or this show different from that why thing of why should I come out? And so the engine that fueled that was new music. There's new stuff that we're gonna play. So come out, check it out. And so that became sort of the ceaseless output of new stuff and experimentation, but also within a social atmosphere of, we're with our friends, we're outside of school. This is a fun thing, and that created sort of that feedback loop of like developing our sound, our taste, and of course we were recording on on the Zoom recorder or whatever. There weren't GoPros yet. And so we, started developing that sound and that thing through those house shows. And then from there, it's like, okay, we need a CD. Why do we need a CD? Because we want to book this band at certain venues around Ohio. We want to play in Cincinnati. We want to play in uh, Akron or Cleveland. And so we need something that proves that we we are a good band. And so that became sort of the motivation behind recording. And so doing all of that stuff together really was like the start of the band. And so by the time that we graduated, there was this head of steam. We had a show to play. We, eventually when we started playing at venues, there's this venue called Dick's Den where we would have to play for 4 hours a night. 4 hours of mostly original music. That's a lot.
It's a
So,
lot. Yeah.
that was like, and I remember we'd be reading, Chris would have these like opus 7-page harmony uh parts. And so it's gotten a little bit more condensed. And we've started memorizing everything soon after college. Um, and that has made a huge difference for the way that we play. The focus is on us knowing the parts internally and just, having fun with the music. And that's not like a jazz thing. That's just any musician, no matter how complicated it is. You want to play it better, memorize it.
Because you said be present. You said before it helps you to be present.
Totally.
You do that
Yep.
and you internalize it. And so, okay, you mentioned it's on Hunter Avenue, hence Huntertones.
Yes. Yes. That's where
Okay.
the name comes from.
Okay, that's cool. I'm glad I asked that question. And when you were okay, so your sound, all that kind of thing. Let's actually talk about your sound individually because I know one of your fans wants to know. Essentially, I'm going to say this two ways. We're going to talk about your setup in a second, but also your tonal concept. What
Mhm.
drives your tonal concept? And that could be different for each instrument. I totally understand that. That makes sense. But, what drives your tonal concept?
For me, it's like where I'm sitting intonation wise is everything. If I'm feeling weird on the horn, and going between horns, that also is like my relationship between every key of the horn. It's like there's pressing buttons and then there's playing saxophone. Playing saxophone is holding the pitch and typically I place the mouthpiece a little bit above in pitch and pull it down
Oh, interesting. Okay.
in my embouchure. And so for me it's singing through the horn. The where my intonation is when it's good is is because I'm hearing myself and it's right where I want it. A lot of times when it's bad, it's because I'm not hearing myself. There's a the loop isn't being completed. I'm
Disconnect.
I'm blowing into a void and I'm not getting enough back. And so that's a thing that I'm constantly working on, whether that's practicing at home, like into a mic like this, into headphones, because a lot of situations now I'm using in-ear headphones and using a bell mic. So I don't practice without them and then play the show. I'm practicing in the situation into my Apollo interface and working on the way that I'm playing these shows so that I'm used to the loop of like
Makes sense.
monitoring, which is foreign. I've had to get used to it over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Um, and I love playing acoustic though too in like a small venue. And so I don't change setups between, playing in a 100 cap room and playing at Red Rocks or Madison Square Garden. It's like I'm playing on the same. I don't change my setup for pop or jazz, or
Oh,
it's like
interesting.
I'm playing the same reeds, same mouthpiece, same horn, and it gets me where I want to go and the way that I want to express myself. So, yeah.
Okay, I want to just ask a couple of questions about, okay, your in-ears and yeah, like what are you using for like your in-ears and also your wireless mic?
These are
Are they Sennheiser?
no, these are Shure.
Okay.
These are the Shure 535s. Uh,
Okay.
it's not molded. But I think most of the guys in horn heads are using these. Um, and yeah, there's also like pretty economical, just like Amazon ones that got me through the first couple years of doing it. Eventually, I'm trying to like get it where I can. Usually, I'm one off when I'm soloing because I need
Oh,
to like hearing the way the reed vibrates from behind the horn.
yeah.
There's like something that happens there that I need to have actually what's happening. I can't be fully plugged in.
But that's
Um,
hard though. Like when I've used in-ears, and I don't use them as much. And when I first started using them, yeah, people don't realize it takes an adjustment. Certainly does. But when you take one out, it's also an adjustment too, because you're not hearing, you can't hear everybody in the band. Everybody's through the in-ear monitors and stuff like that. That's another adjustment too. That's a little tough.
or you're hearing them very, very loudly.
That's true.
Like you're
True.
next to a bass amp, or it's like that's the other thing. So just trying to like, I try not to think about it more than I need to, but I do practice it.
Smart.
And I guess the concept of sound is really just like I'm going for a fat, warm tone that I can play. A good indication of a good reed is one that can reach about 5 octaves. Am I playing 5 octaves in shows? Usually not. You usually don't want to hear that. Uh, and the fifth octave has kind of become like a recent development.
Okay.
Um, you know, trying to great power comes great responsibility. Trying to learn it better, and it's wild, but it's a good indication of whether you got the read right. If you can hit that, you got your altissimo B flat, you got your one above that, and then you can get up to the fifth. Sometimes on a good read, you can get up to literally 2 octaves above altissimo B flat
Wow.
on the current setup, which I think is an indication of like, okay, this is achieving things that I, in 20 years of playing saxophone, haven't been able to come even close to. Um, and
Let's
so,
talk about let's talk about your reeds. Then what
yeah,
your reeds, your mouthpieces, and then we'll get to the horns too.
it's a D'Addario Select Jazz 4S
Okay.
and unfiled. Those are my those are my favorites.
Any reason, I people have asked me this too, but any reason, between unfiled versus filed?
Yeah, just playing them back to back consistently. I'm getting that range and that buzz that I like more on the unfiled.
Okay.
That's it. It's just through my own research. I'm not sure what the filing does to it, but I
I don't
am
know either.
sure of how it feels. And, that's the one thing that I am, you know, sure on is that uh, those ones consistently, I'm getting more out of the box,
Is
ready
that
to go.
is this tenor or is this on all these saxes?
That's on tenor. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, what about like alto?
Alto, I'm playing on a Hemke 3. And then soprano, I'm on a D'Addario Reserve 3
Okay, got it.
soprano. And then baritone, I am on a Hemke 3.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so basically two of the same brands. And then we spoke before too, you're playing all the Jody Jazz mouthpieces.
Yes. Yeah. On tenor, I'm on the hand hammered 9 star.
Really? You're on the hand? Okay. I remember when Jody first came out with that,
Yeah.
and it was a big deal. And I remember, unfortunately, this was the year that Joey DiFrancesco passed, and I had him on the podcast, but he was trying it out at
Hmm.
NAMM and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And
He gave Jody gave me one of the prototypes, like the rose gold ones. And initially I was like, this is a little too much. And then kind of I started rotating, I started getting more curious about it and trying to figure out how I could control it. It's not a brightness thing, it's more just like it opens the roof off where I can get all the warmth that I want. And I realized that it was that I was just not used to metal mouthpieces. Um, I had been on a rubber mouthpiece for like 10, 15 years. Um, and switching from the HR to the HH metal mouthpiece, which is like this, it's basically a rubber mouthpiece design. Um, so it's way heavier than a normal metal mouthpiece,
Yeah.
like twice as heavy. And anytime that you're adding weight or thing, you got people adding these screws that are adding weight to the saxophone, it's going to change the way that it vibrates. And so, I just got used to playing the metal piece, and I liked it. I felt like it was more me, and I just needed to learn how to control it more to get my voice out of it, and less manipulation, less, and then it allowed that fifth octave to come out, which is like, what? I don't really know um, how to think about that. That's wild. It's
Yeah.
appropriate in in certain situations. I mean, I grew up watching Saturday Night Live, so
Okay.
Lenny Pickett starts off every single show like that, up in the stratosphere. So that stuff it's cool. It's welcome. And it's for me, it's kind of a new frontier that I'm learning how to explore.
Oh, that's awesome. That's cool. All right. So the hand hammered nine on tenor. And what about the alto?
Alto is the HR custom dark. And
Really?
that's a 7.
Okay. And the reason I'm saying really, I would think that, well, alto's going to be a little bit more of a brighter sound anyway. So I guess that's why the custom dark, that's what, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
And then the soprano is a HR 7 star.
Yeah. And again, that makes sense too, because the soprano, we don't want it to be so bright and, you know, um,
Mhm.
have a metal on that. And then the Barry.
Barry is a DV10.
Okay. Now these are all, well, you got the HR custom dark, totally get that. But the DV is definitely a different than the hand hammered. Yeah.
Yeah. And so being on a low A, Barry, it's a divergent instrument from the rest of the saxophone family, much like the straight soprano is as well.
True.
It's a whole other beast that I've spent a lot of time on over the last 2 years, playing in a very specific um, type of music. With Corey and with the Hornheads, it's like I need to be able to cut, and I'm matching with Kenny Holman, who is like, there's Lenny Pickett and then there's Kenny, and the two of them are really stratospheric, amazingly inspiring saxophonists, um, where he's able to play in octaves and uh, with brightness and with force, and so I'm blending with that sound, and
Yeah.
so they're kind of that's a part of it, and that's in my ear, right next to me, and so part of my warm up has been doing like 4 octave, like I'll play low A, and then I'll change my embouchure completely, where my palette is. It's like a changing the vowel sound and
Uh-huh.
getting 4 octaves up in A. And like, I think by the time that we release this, there will be another live record from Corey where there's a solo on Direct Flight where there's like a solo break. And I get like 4 octaves, and then I go up from high A to a high C sharp, which is like an octave above altissimo C sharp.
Wow.
Which, of course, everybody came out to this show to see altissimo baritone saxophone. Um, and so that's just been like a weird using, it's more thinking about voicing than altissimo, really, is how much of the range am I vibrating through this instrument when I'm warming up? And that's a good indication of if the setup is really working for you.
Yeah. And do you find, are you able to get all the reeds in the box to work? Are you using something like a reed geek, or are you the type of guy that just slaps the reed on, you just deal with it?
No, I'm messing with them. Yeah, I'm using the Swiss Army knife thing from Boston from Jack. that has the square edges on it. That is, I'm shaving down the the back of it, and then the rails. If it's not getting, usually I like the reeds are a little bit hard for me, and I can work them down to
Got it.
where I like them, and then that's pretty much it. So just trying to get the table uh, level, uh, and that's pretty much all they need. I like to have a little bit of uh, being able to work. Like it makes me feel like I'm in control by by being able to do a little something if it's not working, rather than thinking like it's just you, man. Just change you, change what you're doing, change the air, change. It's like I don't like to change that as much because our sound is completely reliant on this organic material that a lot of times I will kill one in a show or two. So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
going through reads pretty quickly. Um,
Wow. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a lot. So you're killing one reader. Well, okay. You mean you're practicing on it, and then you'll do a show, and then it's done.
yeah, and I would attribute that more to playing, you know, with bands that are all
Right.
instruments that can be louder than mine. You
High
know,
energy.
you
Yeah.
got you got you got volume knobs, amps, a drum set, and trumpet and trombone.
Yeah.
Those are all, and so for me, it's just, playing with that or an organ, a Leslie, throwing sound all through the room. And so there's nothing wrong with that. It's just I play the horn hard and I have a pretty open setup. So the reed is just it's going. And so I know for me, it's always checking to make sure that I can get the low notes out at low volumes, low D, full tone, not subtone. Can I hit that at pianissimo? Um, Walter Blanding did a good clinic on that
Yeah.
when I
Walter
was at
Blanding.
the essentially Ellington thing in high school. That had an impact on me in terms of is your setup working for you? And that was a really great exercise of like, can you play not subtone? That's an excuse. That's a coping mechanism for a hard setup. Can you actually play the full range of the instrument at the full range of dynamics?
And Walter Blanding, I mean, yeah, just phenomenal, phenomenal musician. There's no question about that. So, to have that kind of advice is incredible. And I'm just
Yeah.
thinking, yeah, so on the hand hammered, so you've got it's a 9 star, right? But you're doing the 4S. It's interesting because a lot of people be like, for a lot of people, they play a larger tip opening. They'll play a softer reed, but you're
Mhm.
not doing that. And again, this is the beauty of this. Everybody's a little bit different. You know,
Yeah.
but you're taking
And
that 4S unfiled, and you're probably between a 4 and maybe a 3 3/4, 3 7/8 type of thing going on there.
yeah.
To make that shine for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a pretty open and pretty 2x4 kind of setup. But for me, I don't it the the combination of buzz and like tone, that's like the sweet spot that I want. There's this thing that I'm always going for that is like an intensity without having to just like manipulate all this stuff. If that's what's coming out like from a mezzo piano and it's just like barking at you, that's what I want for my sound of like
Okay.
the horn working for you. And just, that's the concept that I'm going for is a fat tone that uh, I can be relaxed playing, you know,
Right.
because if I start getting more involved with my lungs and with those things, sometimes my body can get involved, and all of a sudden my dexterity will out the window.
Yeah.
Once larger muscle groups start working on something. So trying to just be relaxed. That's always a something in the back of my head.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because any little tension in your body, it comes out. It comes out everywhere else. People don't
Hmm.
realize that. So you mentioned that the horn working for you. When did you start using P Mauriat instruments and why?
I bought a P Mauriat baritone saxophone when I was a band teacher for 1 year um, after college, and the music and arts had a music educators discount, and so one
Okay.
of the reasons that I got this I loved how it looked, to be honest, and then I learned how to play it, and I love how it sounds. I love how it plays. The thing is a Mack truck. It can take, this has been all over the world. And so baritone saxophone is a difficult instrument to travel the world playing.
Yeah.
It can be hard on the player, carrying the dang thing,
Yeah.
but also, it's heavier, so it can injure itself because of the weight. And so if somebody drops it or doesn't take care of it, and I remember we were doing the Jam cruise. We landed in Jamaica, and American Airlines had damaged the horn,
Wow.
dropped the flight case, and Kenny Holman bent it with his bare hands and fixed it before the first show. Um,
Oh my God.
and
Okay.
yeah, it was something like the E flat post,
Okay.
so it was like pretty important. Um,
Oh,
and Yeah, it was just not great, but it bounced back. I mean, quite literally. And it's a fantastic horn that just, the intonation, it sits well. I can with this setup and with this horn, I can push, and it's always giving me gas. It's never like topping off.
man.
I think early on when I was playing Barry, it was like certain notes would be really sharp and certain notes would be really flat. And it's like this I don't feel comfortable on this thing. It was pressing buttons. And now it feels like an extension of my tenor, which is an extension of my voice, which is just like, okay, cool. Anywhere I play on the instrument, I can make it sound good. Whether that's a C sharp that on other horns would sound thin, whether it's, palm keys, whether it's, altissimo. I'm doing things that not a lot of other people are doing, and I'm able to get weird with it and improvise and, all that stuff. So it's like, it's pretty cool. It's allowed it doesn't get in my way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the
Which
thing.
we're, especially with Corey Wong and playing that music, it's like, it's really pushing the limits of musicality. Because, like I said, playing 16th notes in the 150, 160s, there's not a lot of bands doing that, going for that. I mean, he's got a motor for a right hand,
Yeah.
and keeping up with that, I don't want to slow the band down. It's like I want to be a strength, not a weakness. And so this thing, I can just, I can get all over it. And I'm working on that stuff with the metronome, knowing that I'm there. So the most difficult stuff I memorize, and we'll be working on it as a band, and I can be listening to every, blending with the horn section rather than like worrying that like, oh,
Can I get this? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
That's
So
that's the whole
it's
thing.
yeah, I've had to become very intimately close with this baritone, and it's so far it's kept me in the game, which I'm grateful for.
What's the model on that?
This is the 300 DK.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then in terms of your other horns, like the models and stuff like that, are you on P Mauriat for all your horns?
I am not. I am in the process of, maybe soon, switching over.
Oh,
But right
cool.
now, it's a Mark 6 Selmer. It's like a third month of production tenor, and then is it Bisher?
I know, right? It's Busher.
True Tone. That's the horn that my grandfather gave me. That was his,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
1927.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. That
yeah.
and the older horns, even the Mark Sixes, like, you talk about intonation compared to the modern horns, right?
Mhm.
It's, there's a lot of voicing, a lot of listening and yeah, just keeping your ears open and stuff to get those things in tune. So
Yeah.
that's hard. 1927. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the soprano is a Yamaha, I believe a 62.
Got it. Okay. And do you feel, well, no, I guess it's the band that, whichever band you're in. With Corey, you're on Barry. With the Huntertones, you seem to be on tenor,
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess it
But at
depends.
the same time, I mean, with Huntertones horns, with some of the stuff that we've been doing with Lake Street Dive, the Barry has been also a part of that sound. And the other thing is that, like, we'll do the whole session as a horn section, and then it's like, okay, let's add some Barry, and it's like, okay, it's been sitting here cold, and like now I'm the only guy recording, and it's like I've been able to, like, doing more things. It's like a couple of songs, Golden Tulip by Huntertones, or like Tunnel. These a little bit more like intense, and it's usually centered around low C's, which is the low A on the Barry. I use that note. That's like the $1,000 or $1,500 note, right? I use it a lot, and so that's an important note in Western music. So yeah, it's like it's always there, and fortunately, I get through those sessions where it's like, okay, cool. Now the Barry's a strength. It's not like a, oh God, what's about to happen,
You
which
took that I
is
dare
cool.
you.
Yeah, yeah, and then it's fun. Then it's like, yeah, I can do it. I know all the parts because I've been playing them in B flat for all these takes now. Time to switch. It's like I know where they all go, and have been thinking about where this other thing could, the answers, or like all those different things. So it becomes easier the more that you do these things. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is so cool. And so, all right, upcoming projects, right? So we're talking about Corey Wong. When is that coming out?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, Corey Wong is a prolific musician. So I'm sure it's in the next year, probably in the next 6 months, probably in the next 4 months. So by the time that we release this, so yeah, I don't have an exact date on that.
Got it. Okay. And then what about for, you said the Hunter Tones, you're going to be going into the studio in August.
hmm we're going in the studio in August. We are also releasing two singles this spring.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and so one of them is a new version of For Roy, which is also a collaboration with the band Butcher Brown, an amazing band out of Richmond, Virginia. And so we're doing that, and then also we're going to be releasing a single with Kurt Elling, our version of Wichita Lineman. Continues. Also Super Blues releasing another. Sorry, I forgot to mention
Oh,
the
okay.
they're doing like a Guilty Pleasures 2, which is a bunch of covers. They've released Turn to Stone, an ELO cover, and then Say You Love Me as singles. The full EP, it's actually an album, not an EP, that drops in mid-May. So that'll be out by the time that this is out. And I did all the horn arranging. That's all Huntertones horns.
Cool. This is great. And between composing, arranging, getting all this music done and all that kind of stuff, you're definitely very busy. But the main theme of this is that and I always like to take extensive notes when I'm doing these podcasts, and it's the yes mentality, embracing the challenge, and like the I dare you, and just dealing with that. I think that's incredible. I think that's so
Yeah,
incredible. Everything that you've done. Dan, you've been so generous with your time. I wanted to thank you. Thank you for your time. It's been so amazing to speak with you. And just thanks again for being here.
absolutely. Thank you for having me. I love this. I love music. I love saxophone. So these are all the things I love. I appreciate you. Thank you for helping me tell my story. And yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Oh, my pleasure too. Awesome.